Every day, millions of people do the exact same thing without noticing. Every time they open a new website, something appears before they can read a single word. A notification covers the screen, asking them to choose about cookies. It is not the main content, yet it is the first thing they must face. Most users do not stop to read it carefully. They pick the fastest option, usually accept all, and move on. The action happens so often, it is barely noticed anymore. Behind that click is a system that lets websites store and use information about you, including tracking behavior and collecting data for larger systems behind the scenes. So, does that mean your private life has been exposed to giant tech platforms? That question sounds frightening, but it is not baseless. We feel uneasy because the internet seems to know too much about us. But how can something so small as one click carry such heavy consequences? To know whether that fear is justified, we have to go back to when the cookie was born. Back then, the internet could not even remember anyone at all. Welcome to Everyday Things Explained. The moment the web lost its memory. Imagine the world of 1994. The web was still very primitive. Websites were just scattered text pages loading slowly. And most importantly, the HTTP protocol of that time had absolutely no memory. In engineering, this is called stateless. What does that mean? It means that every time you move to a new page, the system treats you like a complete stranger, even if you had sent it information just 1 second earlier. That created problems that were very ordinary. A website could not keep you logged in. It could not remember who you were. And worst of all, it could not keep your shopping cart. You place a pair of shoes into the cart on page A, then you click to page B to choose a shirt, and boom, the cart is empty. At the time, the website behaved like someone suffering from total amnesia. And this is where Lou Montulli enters the story. A young engineer at Netscape. Lou was not trying to invent global surveillance. He was simply a programmer solving a very practical technical problem. How do you make the web less forgetful? His solution was to send a small piece of data from the server to your browser and have the browser keep it, then return it to the server on later pages. Lou called it a cookie. The thing that would later make billions of people worry about being tracked was originally created for one simple reason: to make a website a little less forgetful. The man who taught the internet to remember you. Before it gained its bad reputation, the cookie was once a silent hero. It was not a thick personal file containing the secrets of your life. It was more like a session identification card. Because of cookies, the web could finally do the things we now take for granted: remember that you were logged in, keep items inside your shopping cart, remember that you prefer dark mode instead of light, or remember the language you are reading in. At this stage, the cookie played the role of invisible infrastructure. When the very website you are visiting places a cookie in order to serve you on that same site, we call it a first-party cookie. It is like a waiter at your regular cafe, remembering your preferences so they can serve you better. At that point, the cookie was a useful tool. Absolutely not the villain. But the history of technology often turns at the exact moment when a useful tool begins generating enormous economic value. From shopping carts to a tracking machine. The turning point came when the internet transformed into a digital advertising economy. Now, a website was no longer just a website. It embedded ads tracking scripts and social media like buttons from other addresses. And this is exactly when the villain stepped onto the stage: the third-party cookie. At that point, the web's memory was no longer contained within the house you were visiting. A system outside that site had begun to recognize you too. You look at a pair of shoes on page A. Then you see it following you on page B, page C, even into social media itself. Not because the internet can read your thoughts, but because Lou Montulli's same memory logic had been expanded into a cross-site recognition system. The cookie did not change roles because it suddenly became evil. It changed roles because a new economic system arrived and used it in a different way. Lou Montulli created the cookie so the web would not forget a session. But the advertising economy used that exact same logic, so an entire network would never forget you. Why does the internet now have to ask permission to remember you? So then, how accurate is the fear of handing over all your private secrets? Let me adjust that perception a little. Clicking Accept all does not mean that a company instantly receives your entire life secrets in such a simplified way. But it does mean you are allowing additional non-essential layers of tracking used for analysis and cross-site advertising. The most important thing is to separate two different kinds of memory. One is memory that lets a website function like login sessions or shopping carts. The other is memory that lets outside systems track behavior for advertising and user profiling. The good news is that modern browsers have responded very strongly. Apple's Safari and Mozilla's Firefox now block third-party cookies by default. They isolate the memory of each website, so those sites can no longer gossip about you with one another. So my practical advice is this. When you see that cookie banner, do not look at it in terms of good or bad. Look at it as a choice. If all you want is to read the content, prioritize rejecting the non-essential parts. Do not become so extreme that you imagine every cookie is harmful. Because without them, the web would instantly return to the amnesia of 19, an innocent name, a history that is anything but. That annoying pop-up you see every day, it is not just a piece of interface bureaucracy. It is a leftover relic from an entire historical journey spanning 30 years. The internet went from not being able to remember who you were at all to learning how to remember in order to serve you, then accidentally remembering far too much for the sake of profit, and now it is being forced to learn the limits of memory all over again. The next time you see the button that says Accept All, you may no longer see it as a meaningless click. You are standing exactly at the point where convenience, advertising, and privacy collide. Choose wisely. But before we part, take your eyes off the screen and look down at your feet for a moment. More specifically, at the railway tracks. Have you ever wondered why people pour billions of sharp, rough stones beneath them instead of laying smooth concrete or using fine gravel that looks nicer? That is not some random decorative choice. That broken stone you see every day is actually an engineering masterpiece. And without it, every train journey in this world would soon end in disaster. Thank you for spending this time with me, uncovering the hidden logic of simple things. I am Everyday Things Explained.